Hello, welcome to this webinar where I'm going to talk you through and give you some ideas on how to start to select your plants for your personal plant palette. I'm going to hide me and you can have a bigger screen here for that. Okay, off we go. So just so that you can see the image here, if you're curious, if you're looking for a beautiful feature tree, this was an image that we took of a client's garden. It's an entranceway which was very wide and needed a focal point to it. So a beautiful terracotta pot here with the ginkgo tree, lovely seasonal colour changes. This is it in the spring, mid-spring, early summer. Beautiful frilled leaf, and the underplanting there at the base is Biddy Biddy Purpurea, lovely dark colour contrast, that sort of burgundy to green. So if you're looking for a feature tree for your garden, it doesn't grow too big within this pot, it's very contained. This is a nice combination. Okay, so what I would like to do is show you lots of different images, different plant combinations, and talk about why they work. So you just get an understanding of the sorts of things to keep a lookout for when you're choosing plants. Now, we've started to talk a little bit about the different jobs that plants do within a composition in a garden. I mean, if you're using two plants in a garden bed because we're trying to keep it simple and stylish, we use a sort of a 1-to-2 relationship. So that means you'd have one feature plant and then you'd have two fillers. And that would be a quantity, so two plants of the same variety, a 1-to-2. If you have 3 different plants in a garden bed, we use a 1-2-3 relationship. So one feature plant, 2 fillers, and then 3 ground covers. Okay, there's always a little bit of flexibility around this, but it gives you just a good starting point to learn about what you're doing. So feature plant, normally bigger, taller, has a more definite, stronger colour, a strong form or a strong texture. So it's really drawing the eye to that, often a strong branching pattern if it's a tree, rather than sort of a thin, narrow tree, or if it has a sort of a strong presence about it. Your fillers, of which you normally have at least 2, they're normally lower and smaller, and you have more of them, which you place around that feature plant. And your subordinate plants, the ground covers, you have lots of them. As we say often, I use the comparison that they're like a carpet, and they're carpeting the earth and help suppress all of those weeds. So in this image here, our feature plant is the Nikau. You can't see all of it here, great for tropical or native gardens. The filler plant is the Renga Renga. That's the plant sort of on the left-hand side with a sort of thicker leaf, a great plant for mass planted underneath sort of dry, shady places. Snails do like it though, so you often need to use slug pellets with that. And then the Mondo Grass, that's the finer looking grass, that's the ground cover there, going all the way down the edges and between the cobblestones. Another example here is beautiful arching fronds of the Lepidosmia, the lovely palm there. Got 2 different sorts of fillers here. You can see in the background the jade plant, and in the foreground, just underneath, you can see the hellebores, which are winter flowering roses, so a little bit of seasonal interest there come winter. And then the carpet, the ground cover, is baby's tears. So when you're selecting plants, you're trying to make relationships and subtle colour connections between different parts of the garden. Often you can use similar leaf shapes but in a different colour, or often the same leaf shape but with a contrasting colour, contrasting, big leaves with smaller, so there's a little bit of a contrast. It's not just all the same. And often we try and use same colour but see it in different plant features. So it could be that the flower of one plant, there's a similar shade in the stem or a leaf of another. So you're just trying to have a relationship between all of your plants in some way. Maybe that they all have, sort of dark green glossy leaves leaves, for example, but some of the leaves are small, some of the leaves are large. Let's look at some examples. Here in this image, we have a similar form or shape. So you can see the beautiful, vibrant, hot pink of the Bromeliad matchstick sort of coming out there. And then that's mimicked and matched with the Asparagus Fern, similar shape also coming out into the bed. Here we have the rounded form of the Pittosporum topiary balls, and that rounded form is mirrored in the round Agapanthus. So this isn't the wild one that we see out and about at the sides of the road. This is a cultivar, doesn't go rampant, and it has that lovely white sort of spherical flower. So you've got this sort of the two rounded forms relating to one another here. This is a shot from my garden. I have a tropical garden. I sort of inherited a garden which had very large established palms, and to change that would have been just too big a job. And removing larger established trees is always a big call, because you're going to wait a long, long time to get that sort of size again. So I sort of just accepted that I was going to have a tropical garden and went with that. You see the large cycas there, great focal plant, has that sort of a centre within the fronds coming out of that. And then my ground cover is the Bromeliads, so lots of them, keeping my weeds down, which is great, but they have the same form, so like that centrepiece with then the leaves coming out from that point. So yeah, quite a nice tropical planting combination there for you tropical plant lovers. Here you have similar leaf shapes, sort of thinner with pointy bits at the end, but in a real contrasting colour. And I quite like the variegated. So when I say variegated, that means that the leaf has two different colours on it. Here the Persian shield has sort of like a dark green veining, and that dark green is a similar green to the Dracaena in the background. So a similar leaf shape, but with a contrasting colour. One of my favourite plants here, Ligularia reniformis, that's the Latin name. Tractor seat is the common name, because it has that distinctive shape in the leaf, which is similar to one of those old tractor seats. So big, green, glossy leaf, contrasted with a much, much smaller, but also rounded leaf. You can't see, it's not exactly the same shape, but it sort of has that rounded edge about it. So similar shape, but much a contrast in colour there. With a shiny also contrasting against a sort of a matter leaf of the Coprosma. Quite a nice, you could use that in a tropical garden or a native. I know that we have simplified things into sort of 3 different categories, but actually sometimes the juxtaposition of something tropical against something very different can work really well. Here we have very different leaf shapes, but there is a colour relationship. So in the background, you can see the hosta, the variegated hosta, which has that sort of light yellowy green in the centre. And then in the foreground, the Acorus, which has that exactly the same colour, but with a thin green running down the centre veining. So there's definitely a real strong relationship between the hosta and the Acorus in the background. Yeah, really like this. And if you sort of look carefully, much in the background too, you can see that there's been yellow daylilies planted. So that sort of yellow has been brought out in a flower, also in the background of the bed. Here we have the Biddy Biddy again that we saw in the first image as a ground cover. And this little leaf, the colour is just pulled out, very similar to the colour of the bud in the Varroa. So it's not just the leaves that can be sort of similar colours or relationships, but different parts of the plant. Could be the stem, could be the bud, could be the flower. Yeah, really nice, subtle little relationship here. One of my favourites here. So in the foreground we have the Bromeliad with the sort of the reddish colour, which is exactly the same red as you see in the blood grass in the middle. The blood grass has an orange tinge to it, orange yellow, which can then be seen right in the background with the sedum succulent. So a beautiful combination there, sort of beautiful warm muted colours. Love this one. Here we have the relationship of colour between that sort of the reddy burgundy in both the runnera leaf and then with the bromeliad behind it. Also, you can see that there's a sort of a lime green colour in the centre of the bromeliad, which is also mirrored in the centre of the veining of the leaf of the brunnera, and I really love that sort of white silver colour too. So very subtle, but I think just the eye naturally can sort of sense that there's a relationship going on and they go together. I picked this image because I really wanted to just show you the Circus Forest Pansy. That's the tree in the background. If you're looking for a feature tree with some seasonal interest, doesn't grow very tall, 2.5 to 3 meters, perfect for a smaller garden. Lovely change of colour through the season, so really lovely feature tree. Another image from my garden here. I've got some cannas in the background, still not fully thickened up to give me a sort of a really good wallpaper effect. But I really like one of my feature plants is this large Alcantara Rubra Bromeliad. They're really big. They have that lovely red colour, and I just like the similar colour found in the Aeneum Schwarzkopf, which you can see on the left in the foreground. With those popping up around it, there's quite a nice colour relationship there. Also from my garden, I have a little area which is a little bit different, a bit more native. So for you native plant people, here you can see a Formium variety with Dark Delight, really sort of, a dark colour there. And that same colour you can see in the stem of the Muhlenbeckia Astonii. Muhlenbeckia has a really great divaricating texture, that sort of ziggy-zaggy stem that you can see. It actually, you can trim it into all sorts of interesting shapes. And it has that sort of tiny little green leaf, but really, really interesting texture, as many of the New Zealand native plants do. Often if you're planting the divaricated New Zealand plants that have that sort of fine structure, they're much better at the front of a bed rather than behind, because they sort of get lost because they're so fine. So it's often great to have something with a bigger leaf behind them so that you can really see that sort of zig-zaggedy interesting form that they have. Another one from my garden. Oh, went too fast there. Let's go back. Another one of my absolute favourites. I love that light bluey green colour, the glauca colour of the euphorbia. You look closely, the stem is a sort of hot pink, and that hot pink is picked up with the Iraceme brillantissima. Really, it dies down a bit, the Iraceme, in the winter and early spring, but it comes back with a vengeance as a real bright pop, great in a tropical garden. Here, I saw this the other day, a lovely, lovely hibiscus, beautiful pink, and exactly the same shade as the pink in the flax behind, another Formium flax variety, pink stripe. So yeah, walked along and that just really sang to me. Here, it doesn't necessarily have to be about lots of sort of variety and looseness here, which I would say sort of make more of a mainly modern style. You have lots of different colours and plants, so they're all styled in the same way. So here, sort of straight edges, rectangular, angular entranceway here would suit sort of the entrance to a more modern home that would have some straight, clear lines. So different colours, different plants, but they're styled in the same way. Here, same idea, but they're all styled in that sort of box ball idea here. So lots of different sorts of plants, but they've all been topiaried into a ball shape. I think it's really important to have some kind of seasonal change or interest in a garden. It can get very complicated if you're trying to make sure that you've got lots of things happening all the year round. But I think it's nice to think about having some sort of colour or interest in your garden. So that might be a deciduous tree, but I fully appreciate for many people the leaf drop is a problem. I have a beautiful small maple which is situated sort of in the rear of the bed, so it doesn't really bother me, and it's not like the leaves get on the lawn, but maples are often great for that, and here's some in this image. The colour is just lovely. The easiest way for some seasonal changes is to pop down to the garden centre each season and just get some potted colourful flowers for pots. That's great too. But thinking about maybe roses, clivia, canna lilies in a tropical garden, some hibiscus, star jasmine, camellias in the early winter. It's going to bring a little bit of cheer and change to the garden. And here we've seen this image before, but I think what it does really well is that it contrasts the formal shapes of those clipped balls, very sort of formal, with the informal. So you've got in front of them the very loose grasses. And you also see just that fern popping out on the right-hand side up against the topiary balls. So you've got something, sort of very loose and light with the fern leaf against something solid and structural. So that contrast between formal to informal works well. Lovely. I hope you've enjoyed seeing those and can see the sorts of relationships that you could be looking out for. What I often do is go to the garden centre and wander around and pick up plants and put them in my trolley and just sort of walk around with them for a bit and just sort of see the relationships and bring a group of plants, maybe 3 or 4, because that's really in most sort of suburban garden beds, sort of 3, 4 plants is going to be sort of your maximum, and just see how they look together. Do you have contrasting leaf shapes? Are all the leaves waxy or glossy or matte? Do you have some sort of colour contrasts, similar leaf colour or very contrasting? Just see how they look together. And often in most good garden centres, the people who work there, there'll be someone who has some design experience who can put together some combinations or know what they've got in stock currently, because that often changes and is very seasonal, that's going to look good together.